We will.
May start by reading that.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Keller, and I am the Chair of the Solid Waste Disposal Recycling Advisory Committee. Welcome to June 12th, 2025 meeting. In accordance with the open meeting law, at the beginning of the meeting, I must disclose to attendees whether the meeting is being recorded. This meeting is being broadcast via Zoom and is being recorded for publication and later viewing and administrative purposes. After notifying the chair, any person may make a video or audio recording of the meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium, subject to regional requirements of the chair as to the number, placement, and operation of equipment used so as not to interfere with the conduct of the meeting. Please let me know now so that I can make that announcement as well. No one's recording it.
Nope, it's indicated.
Next, any member of the committee who is participating remotely must be disclosed and recorded in the minutes of the committee. The following members are participating remotely. And
Currently, no one, I thought Mr. Heller was joining us remotely, but
as we have one or more members,
you don't have to read
yeah,
them.
all right, so. Do I have to do a roll call now since there's someone?
No, because no one's online.
Okay.
You don't need to do a roll call.
Okay, so we have a quorum. We have a meeting, and if we have minutes to approve.
Yes, from March 13th, 25, they were previously circulated twice,
Yes,
and you also have a copy before you. Joined us, so we're gonna have to do roll calls.
okay. I thought we said Jeffrey.
Well, Jeff had emailed me and said he was gonna attend remotely.
Oh, this is Wells.
Yeah, well, it's just.
Hey guys.
Wells and family.
Yes.
We're reviewing the minutes, from, March 13th. So I think do you have any input on that, Wells, or any, you guys have you just reviewed that minutes?
I'm good.
Wait, can I have a motion to?
Make a motion to accept the minutes, those.
Second. Okay. All right, so I have that roll call, so David? Yes. Bill?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes. So we're here to talk about, the RTS, the charges and fees that, and we discussed it, pretty much at length at the last meeting. And we're here to, there was some information that we, that, was it Wells or was it Jeffrey who requested, some additional, information, I think, right?
No, it was, and that was provided previously, it was, we didn't have quorum, so that's why
Okay.
I could take action.
Yes,
The, this chair and members of the board, there are just, three, proposed rate changes. And two of them, have to do with box springs and mattresses. Looking to increase the, drop-off fee from $20 to $25 for residents and for commercial from $40 to $50. The reason for these changes is because the cost to the town from the vendor is higher than what we're currently collecting. The change was recommended to go from $15 for a truck tire to $21 for $6. And again, the reason for the change is the cost that the town pays is higher. There are no recommended changes to any of the disposal rates, bag fees across the scale.
Okay. Any further discussion?
And if the committee is supportive of this proposal, would recommend it to the select board. The public hearing will be on June 24th at 6 p.m.
On my calendar.
Dave, I thought at at a previous meeting, you had provided some information that showed that the deficit of the RTF was growing. Would it make more sense to take a look at some of the bag fees or anything to offset that, or is that not a major consideration?
Not a major consideration for this year. One of the reasons behind that is DPW is still conducting the study of the RTS operations overall.
Yep.
And until that's completed, we didn't want to make any major changes to the rates, because depending upon what those recommendations are, what restructuring could result will be reflective in rates for FY 27.
Okay. Since.
Okay, so I guess, not hearing any further discussions or questions. And I ask for a motion to accept the rates as proposed and recommend for recommendation.
The only thing that strikes me here is that, the Box Spring commercial drop off. It looks like it was just changed the other day. It says, October,
That's last time it took effect that it was increased.
yeah, October 2024,
Yes.
so it seems odd that it would,
I think what happened with that, David, is that we had intended to separate out the commercial mattress from the residential drop off. Obviously, for the residents, we wanted to keep it very, very close to the cost that it was incurring to the town, but we saw that because our rates were so reasonable, some of the commercial haulers were adding mattresses onto their loads that maybe were coming from other communities, and that passes the burden on to basically the town staff to manage those, because mattresses are very difficult to handle in our process. So we had made a motion to create a fee that was twice the residential fee for commercial drop off. And it had in a lot of the proposals for the scale increases, I think that commercial fee had sort of gotten lost, so it was picked up and added. I may have the timing a little off on that, but I think that's how that happened. So that was sort of a protective measure we did to keep commercial mattresses from ending up on the backs of loads that were coming into our community. And if they were gonna come in, we were gonna make enough money to offset the cost to Needham residents.
and then the truck tire seems to be an odd amount. $21, there's nothing else.
It represents the fees they've charged us. We don't really get too many truck tires that aren't from DPW, which obviously would be no cost. We'd track them in our scale, but there'd be no cost. the truck tire, might come from a contractor and we might bill 3 to 5 of them quarter, so it's not frequent, but we did notice that we weren't covering our costs. So in most transactions at the scale are with a credit card. So there's no cash up there, so $21 isn't really a burden for someone, you know. It's just a card transaction. But that's a pretty exact cost to our operations.
Make a motion that we propose to accept the propose to recommend the rate changes as provided.
Second,
Okay. So in favor, or how do you vote?
Yes.
You have to do a roll call.
Yes. Bill,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. And that brings us up to updates.
So I'm just gonna cover the last couple of months, because we did miss the last meeting. When we were here last, we were coming through March and April, and the pricing on recycling was very even. We had something like a $90 revenue followed by a $50 invoice for 2 months, which represented, something like 300 tons of material, so it was very close to zero. Unfortunately, we're trending into costs. There was sort of a supplement to the commingled recycling from number 2 natural HDPE, which is basically the milk jug, was a very high price, and that was kind of lifting the cost of all commingled recycling. Now we are seeing that revenue is drying up, and costs of glass to process and dispose are actually hitting the commingled recycling, and so we're trending towards seeing not significant costs, but we're not gonna see revenue for probably a couple months. In general, over the fiscal year, we saw probably about half the months were revenue and half were costs. We ended up the year with probably something about $8,000 in some processing costs and invoices, and probably something around like a little over $4,000 in revenue. So in general, that's a pretty good year. Considering that, I had concerns about tariffs, but we haven't really seen that impact us, and markets have been okay. Our processor has a pretty strong domestic processing and market network, so they don't seem to be too concerned about global economies affecting or tariffs affecting recycling. We are.
I have a question about, I have a question, but since you're bringing up the commingle and the changing in revenue. I'd like to hear you weigh in on regards to the black plastic that came up before town meeting. If this is not a good time, we can put it in under things not considered. And let you do your update. How would you like to?
So I could address it briefly, and then we could maybe follow up later if you have follow-up questions. I'd say that in general, it's not a major factor in the costs of recycling.
Let me just start. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? There was a citizen petition from the Green Needham folks. There were 2 petitions. One was you had to ask they wanted to require restaurants to ask people whether or not they wanted plastic forks and knives, right? So they wouldn't just give it automatically. Trying to reduce that from the waste stream. And also the black to-go containers. Where they said they wanted to ban them from restaurants, claiming one, that they're made with, from melted down, electronics, so there's lead and other kind of chemicals in them as well. And they also made the argument that, that the scanners on conveyor belts at recycling didn't pick up the black. So they didn't get sorted correctly or recycled correctly or something like that, okay? I had only first heard about it. I wish we had talked about it here. Because when it first was presented as a warrant and as a town meeting member, and all of a sudden it was like, oh.
Yeah.
You know, I ought to have an opinion on this, you know?
I can provide maybe a little background, and I think what happened in the conversations, there's two separate issues. So black plastic, when it goes to the recycling facility where we send our material, because the sorting for plastic is done through optic sorters, which I imagine is kind of like a laser technology to look for the polymer. It can't find black, it doesn't register, so the optic sorter sees it only as a black item. So it passes through where the plastics would get sorted out. So that means that the number 5 black plastic will end up at the back end of the sorting line. Everything at the back end of the sorting line is considered trash. So it doesn't get called out. It's not that it's not recyclable, because it is number 5 plastic. So that was one of their concerns. They, in a way, they almost conflated it with another study which had been, which had looked at black kitchenware, like spatulas, like a heavy spatula that you might use. And that study was discredited because their magnitude of concern was off by a factor of 10. So instead of being a hazard, it was 10%. It was like well below what they consider a hazard. Anyway, there was a concern that black plastic kitchenware made from recycled electronics had flame retardant in it. And so there was concern that if you use this black plastic kitchenware, you could leach that into your food. However, you'd have to submerge the kitchenware, you know, at quite a high temperature for 15 minutes in order to generate any kind of this material into the cooking. And the magnitude was off by a factor of 10, which is pretty significant. So the study was sort of discredited, and the two issues were conflated and sort of presented. So there's been some confusion. I've heard the confusion sort of expressed at the select board and at town meeting, but the motion did pass for a suggestion, a non-enforceable suggestion to ask restaurants not to use black plastic. The guidance we got.
Basically, they said it's still banned because the war, but they put an amendment in that said there's no penalty, there's no fine.
The processor we use is Casella, and they said if it were passed, they prefer a white plastic number 5, which is a container they could recycle. So there is some truth to the black plastic being a negative environmentally. There's also the next wave of technology that's going to improve the sorting facilities is the AI sort of looking for things on the sorting belt, and they can't find the black plastic on a black belt. So a white item would certainly be easier to sort by these robot arms and the AI technology. It's, you know, it's not really affecting the recycling side of things. It's not really an RTS study, is more of an environmental study. We wouldn't see significant costs either way. I think in general, it would be better to get that black plastic out of the takeout containers unless it incurs a burden onto the community, like the businesses, but that's not an RTS concern. But yeah, and then to skip the stuff, the cutlery that you would get and the straws, those aren't recyclable. Those won't be captured at the MRF. So on our end, if they are kept out of the recycling stream, it's going to mean a cleaner recycling stream, and that would lead to a direct increase in our revenue because it doesn't have to be sorted out. They do audit our loads at Casella probably quarterly, and if we have a lot of contaminant in it, that cost will be borne by our commingled sorting fees.
Well, how did you vote? Did you vote on
Yeah.
this? At town
So
meeting?
unfortunately, I was in Peru at the time, but I can tell you how I would have voted. I would have voted yes. I think that you know, I don't. I actually. So again, I wasn't there because I was in Peru, and that was a trip that had been planned for a long time to visit family. Um, but I certainly would have wanted to hear the arguments from businesses and get a better sense for what they see as the costs. But this, I mean, the skip this stuff makes a lot of sense where they have to ask like that. That to me doesn't seem like a cost. It's just, do you want it? If not, then no. The black plastic, I don't fully understand all the costs, but I do see the benefits. I just I don't have all the details about the the business implications to fully understand it.
I did a little research and I spoke to the people who were, spearheading, the thing, right? And, I got up at the microphone and said, I should have, I speak not from the committee, but myself, but I'm a little bit more informed than most. And I got enlightened about, this, and I said, it's gonna change my lifestyle, because I'm gonna stop using the plastic stuff, and I actually talked to a couple restaurants, I talked to Spencer, what's his name, Jay Spencer from, the Bistro, and, so I voted, against the ban, because I didn't think, I didn't think you should start putting, the end user and penalize them. They're buying what's available at Restaurant Depot, and doing the market. And I said to these advocates, I says, they should be they're going for the, low hanging fruit, penalize the little guy because we can get to them. We can't really, they should be advocating to, to either the manufacturers and the recycling companies. I really feel like, the recycling, companies, I mean, revenue and all that, we should regulate this, and demand that they accept everything. And find a use for it, find a way to keep it out of the waste stream, or find a good use for it, but make Polartec vests out of it, or find some kind of use for it. Let's not, let them be able to say, oh, we're only taking this, or we're not taking that, or we're gonna charge more for this. It's like, no. And then the manufacturers who package things, we should have regulations that say, you can't package something that can't be recycled. That doesn't have a stream for it. So that's why, that's my little bit of advocacy, that I can do from a small scale. And I spoke up, and I'm okay with the outcome, because it didn't penalize the users, but maybe, so there'll be a change in the black plastic that, will happen slowly. So, it's good to hear that there's gonna, ways to address it, and it doesn't cost us, more money.
Yeah. Back to the recycling updates, there were a couple things I wanted to follow up that were in the minutes. One of the things that I had mentioned at that previous meeting was that, household recycling that we receive at the transfer station is down. I went back and I looked, so in fiscal 19 on our records, we had about 2,581 tons processed, and that's our. What I call our household recycling, which is the drop off at the transfer station. That's the cardboard, paper, commingled. It also includes the single stream we collect from the schools. And this past 2 fiscal years were below 2,000, where I think it was 1,918 in fiscal 23 and 1,948 in fiscal 24. So we're down, that's a big number. I did look at the 2 streams that were significantly different. Paper obviously is down, but we're doing a lot on the cloud, so, and there's a lot of digital, so it makes sense for paper to be, you know. That, and that number's significant, so that accounts for a lot of it. But commingled, which is, you know, your bottles and cans, household bottles and cans, in fiscal 19, 716 tons. And this last year was 447 tons. That's household recycling. I don't know if that reflects the curbside community and that people have, you know, it's very simple to put your, you know, your
Yeah.
single stream to the curb. You know, the study seems to show that people use both the transfer station and the curbside option. There's a lot of people who do that, so that could account for that.
But I bet you all the new, you know, probably every knockdown. Is one less customer for the transfer station and one more for the private haulers, so. I think I even noticed in, some new garbage cans, is there another private? Company,
The blue ones are
Yeah,
Gastaldo, yeah. Yeah, Gastaldo's doing a lot.
It's because they said that beer's bad for you now, so no one's drinking beer.
Saw that study too. On the other hand, too, total trash for this year is down, but I don't think that's an MSW number. I think that might reflect some of the commercial haulers adjusting to our scale rates. So our total tonnage for all trash going outbound is down. It started off much heavier in the beginning part of the fiscal year, but we're down through these early months of the spring, which, you know, typically April, May, and June are very heavy. We're down, so we're gonna be down for the full year by about 10% this fiscal year. And I think some of that could reflect the adjustments to the scale rate, but I don't think that's, well, I guess that's for you guys to, the loads that are missing are heavy loads, and those are the hardest for us to process, so. This might not be a bad thing, it might be the adjustment that we were expecting when we changed those scale rates.
we've always been sensitive to that, what the, you know, what the market is, and, right, and those guys who, if we're now with the market no longer cheaper. They're just gonna go to the most convenient place, not, you know, whereas before they went to, out of their way to come to Needham for the cheaper
Right,
rate, so. We don't want that traffic.
right. The service delivery study, we did extend the contract deadline to September. Obviously, there's a lot of hot topics in town, and the select board's been, you know, working on a lot of those topics, so. I need to work with, DPW senior management to get the timeline for that presentation. The next presentation will be to the select board, and then there'll be a final draft.
And
Well,
hence my earlier remark about why we weren't adjusting the rates.
Yeah,
Are they gonna make a presentation to us first before the select, or?
I think
should we
their
just-
presentation was about how they're gonna move forward, and then I think at the select board, we would all be there. You know, to hear their presentation to the wider community.
Can we do that as a joint thing, David, where we, there's already reason, maybe there's no reason for us to have there be a quorum, but.
No, I think you're attending the meeting. Because I don't know that it needs to be a joint meeting often, it's easier for all. Committees are allowed to meet as long as they don't deliberate. There's no problem with the quorum being present at the select board meeting.
The RTS was invited to the public health department's food advisory meeting, which included, we brought in the nutrition services people. And I don't know if you've read, but they were covered in the Globe. They are now using their reusable trays there at the schools, which is great. I was invited to come to some of the schools and work with the kids to you know, show them how to work with the new trays, how to stack them, how to you know, come through the line so that they're sorting their food, their recycling, and their trash.
Do you think that this might be one of the contributors to the decline?
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
and you know, it's funny that I was looking at that, so our tonnage in 22 is 127 tons of food diverted to that program. In 23, it went up to 317, And we just did 385 tons out of the schools and out of the transfer station. So I mean, that number could be much bigger, like. We could easily be approaching 1,000 tons if we had full participation. So that's another thing where that's an opportunity. For me, the challenge is getting that word out, finding the drop off places so that we can get that area serviced and keep it, you know, tidy. But that is such an opportunity for us for diversion. At this point, the cost of processing food waste and the cost of processing MSW, the MSW is slightly cheaper, but we do think that that's gonna offset as the new rates come in. So it is good for us to continue to build a robust food waste program. And hopefully, as food waste becomes more of a process that's generally accepted across all communities, they'll be building facilities closer to us, and that's just our goal is that cost comes down and the MSW. As it becomes harder and more difficult to deal with, we'll see that cost offset in the food waste program.
I didn't quite understand this trade business. It seemed like the implication was that all of the trays that were used before were disposable after one use or
There,
two uses or something. That's not the way I remember the schools working.
So it used to
I
be that-
thought they
that
used to have these
plastic trays and
Heavy
put it through, yeah. When,
trays, what,
when I started
Why
with the
is-
town,
is
there were
sustainable?
styrofoam trays at all the schools. And the styrofoam trays were very light to transport and they were disposable. And the kids said, we can't use all these disposable trays, we have to do something about it. And so the fact that the kids and the teachers and the nutrition service didn't like the styrofoam trays became a driver for them to get compostable trays. The problem with compostable trays is they're not compostable, they provide nothing for anaerobic digestion, and they're not recyclable. So they're more expensive and they really provide no environmental benefit. But what they did do is it was the driving impetus for us to do a food waste diversion program. So after we figured out how to get the food waste program in, using that motivation of getting rid of these styrofoam trays, then the nutrition services got these reusable trays. After, we didn't realize at first that the compostable trays weren't compostable, but the digester, the anaerobic digester said, these provide nothing. They come in, we can process them because they're not a contaminant, but they don't provide any of the methane in that process, the biogas that they're looking to generate the energy. So an anaerobic digester makes its money by generating gas, which is burned to generate electricity. The trays provide none of that. So it was a very weird situation.
why did they go to that, why did they go to styrofoam to begin with? I don't remember.
I think the dishwashers in the school became an issue. And it started to come back with the LEED certification that was required. So Sunita was built with like dishwashers, but I don't think some of the older schools, like the Mitchell doesn't. A lot of these schools don't have dishwashers anymore, but they did when we were growing up in town. Like I remember at the Highland, the old Highland School, we had the plastic trays and they had a big dishwasher.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah,
So I don't know what, so when I go back, what's the value of the, I mean, I get that.
well,
it's
we're
got-
back there. Now we're
when
going
I-
out.
It's a stainless
what's
steel
the value?
instead of the plastic.
Yeah, 'cause
Right?
now they can reuse them.
And they probably, stainless steel is probably more durable than those plastics.
Yeah.
Oh, that may
And,
be.
and
yeah,
I think you can also, I think you can use maybe a hotter dishwasher, just because of the metal doesn't. There's no concern about that, you can really sanitize it. I don't know.
And also if the
Oh.
stainless steel gets damaged, you can better recycle it. Plastic is recyclable, but I don't think its value as recyclable is as strong
Those
or as
trays probably
easy.
weren't because they were like plastic, they were laminate, it was like,
Yeah.
it was a laminate, right? So it was a kind of a cardboard with a laminate, like Formica on them. They cracked.
The steel trays are probably more recyclable than the plastic ones.
So anyway, good news, trending well on the food waste and like I see it as an opportunity for us. Other issues, our hauling contract has been resolved. We are working with a new company, which we are having a great service from. We have a good relationship with their admin team, their billing team, and their driver is excellent. The MSW contract that is due to expire in June 30th of 2028. Karis is working with a group of communities to, Karis Lustig, who's the director of DPW, is working with a group of communities led by Worcester. It's 35 or 36 communities, the Millbury Consortium, that negotiated together to get favorable rates. And they've engaged the same law firm that helped us with the negotiations. So we are kind of moving that forward. I don't have a specific update, but I think they're just deciding on how the procurement and invoicing will work with multiple communities. And engaging and selecting a law firm to represent the municipalities is a big step. I think I haven't mentioned this yet, but we're fully staffed with a new hire, a young fella named Trevor Haywood. We're working with him to get his CDLB, which is a requirement in the union. So he's in that training. He has 6 months to get that, or his probation will continue. And then a big deal for us is that we demoed the old trailer. I don't know, Dave, if you've seen that, but the employee trailer was suffering from water damage and rot and had some mold issues. So we were able to, with our own staff, we did a lot of hand demolition on it to recycle the metal siding, recycle the metal roofing. We use sawzalls to cut the flooring, lift the flooring out with RTS equipment. And then we took the metal frame and we were able to cut that into pieces to recycle it. So we recycled more than 50% of the weight of that trailer, probably, given the steel base of the frame. And we anticipate having a new trailer for the employees situated Monday. So
Did that also provide any any outlet for aggression or mental health?
it was pretty fun, but safety first. So those are my current updates. We typically, summer is a little bit slower in terms of activity, but all our guys are in the snow program, so it's harder for our staff to take winter vacations, so we really have to accommodate the union staff and their vacations. So we do have one summer help coming on, and there's a young kid, and so it's kind of nice to have two young people on. They can kind of find their space to work together. But I think we're looking pretty good through the summer. Again, big challenge is trying to get the word out about the food waste and increase that, and then bringing the service delivery study home.
So you don't, with where you're staffed now, you don't have to take some shifts from some of the other DPW workers from.
We get help on Saturdays.
Okay,
Yeah, and when we do paint days, we staff that with out of division help.
is there a rotation?
Yep, we have a call down list.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
So does anyone have any questions, or discussions, presentation?
Mr. Chair, next meeting for the committee, I'm thinking it would be after the report is released. So if you want to look at your calendars and see what your availability is for meeting in end of September, beginning of October.
When you say released, will it be released and then, is that after it's been presented to the select board or us it's released in paper and not had their meeting yet.
I'm thinking it'll be released before the committee meets again, so we actually know what it is the report says.
Right, but I mean, well, when you say released, is that released to Matt versus a presentation to the select board? Will we have it, will we be meeting before the select board gets a presentation?
That's up to the committee, that's why I raised the question.
Well, and I guess that means when does the select boards see it?
Well, that's what I don't know.
Okay,
That's the difficulty, but unfortunately, rooms are booked, the Zoom sessions are reserved and everything, so we're
Alright.
actually gonna.
well, September, our standard time on September, or should we do? Is that what you're suggesting, or?
Yes, but I wanna make sure it works, and there are some holiday conflicts this into September.
For me, at least, my September and October are pretty free, as long as we don't ideally do it on some holidays, or maybe like a long weekend type of a thing.
I see that you're speaking about the 23rd is Rosh Hashanah, so we can't meet then.
Right.
Can we meet on the 16th, or was that too soon? Or do we have to push it to?
The 16th, does that work for you, Matt? September 16th? Or 16th?
I can do that, yeah. That's a Tuesday. Are we doing Tuesdays or Thursdays now?
They're trying to get back to the regular Tuesday.
Okay.
Meetings.
Is that? So that's good for everybody, or the 16th?
And want to get another date in the calendar?
Sure.
How does October? October 20th is a special town meeting, so I'm sure you don't want to meet on October 21st. That they ruled out October. Do you want?
I mean. I don't necessarily have a, well, you're the only other town meeting member. I don't have a problem meeting, on the 21st, sandwiched by special town meeting.
Does that work for the amendments?
Yep, that's okay
Well-
with me.
Okay. So,
Cool.
and then I think when we get to September, we can then look out what we want to meet during the winter months. You know,
Okay. Well, we'll always have our third Tuesday as as a backup, as a baseline, without having to make adjustments during holidays. Correct.
but yes,
Right, and maybe in September, we could go through, the whole calendar year and see, if we have any conflicts, and everybody could, see if, that third Tuesday, it needs to be changed. Okay,
if one of the difficulties, the second Tuesday when the select board would meet is Veterans Day, so the select board may be changing
Alright.
which Tuesday it's meeting.
okay,
That's the other reason I didn't go to November.
okay. Good anticipation,
A motion to adjourn?
yes,
Second,
okay, any discussion? All right, in favor, Dave,
yes.
Yes.
Bill? Wells?
Yes.
And the chair, we're adjourned.
Okay.